Welcome to the Merging Minds podcast. Today's episode 3. Your host, Keith Mintz, and today we're going to be interviewing Bree, who is a BA in sociology. She is a yoga instructor, and she's just all about the mindset. So we're going to go into her mind, see what it's about, see what we can learn, and see what we can take out.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Thanks for coming on. This is like my 3rd episode, so I'm just kind of going with the flow. So you're telling me before, right? You got a BA in sociology.
Oh yeah, that's great. I am actually going back to grad school for my master's in social work. So I just submitted like my first application yesterday for that, and decided that I would work. Well, for a little while, I worked I was like teaching yoga, and then I worked in sales, and sociology really helps you to be able to connect to kind of anybody from any background. And now I'm deciding, just because of pandemic times, I felt like my services and my and my knowledge and furthering my knowledge would be better fit for helping people who are really struggling with mental health. So so I'm in the process of getting hired to be kind of like a house manager in an inpatient rehab.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So when you say you use your degree every day in sociology, what does that mean? Or like, how are you using it?
Oh my gosh. So you basically learn the basics of how society functions, and what kind of influences society to move. And I did my emphasis in social entrepreneurship and leadership. So in every job that I've had, whether it be sales or leading a yoga class, I've been able to use those tools of like effective leadership in any job that I've had. Wow. And then also with friends and family and myself.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because I've always been interested in psychology. I never really looked into sociology. So what's sounds like the difference is like sociology sounds more like social and the general of people, and psychology is more like specifically individuals, or?
Right. So yeah, so sociology kind of looks at things from a micro and macro standpoint. So you would find you would kind of combine, like, psychology, right, is like very individualized, and it's like very diagnosable. Sociology, it kind of I don't know how to explain it, but it'll observe maybe a group in society and how they function, and then maybe apply those principles and those findings or whatever, like if you were doing a research study towards like the greater population of that particular group. So it's kind of like psychology for society.
Interesting. That makes me want to look more into that. Yeah, because I've always interested in like psychology. I read a lot about the brain and things like that, but I never looked into. I didn't know sociology was about that. I don't know why I got confused with that. That's cool. What's like the most interesting thing you've learned in sociology? Studying it.
Well, I think that it's very applicable to what's going on just culturally today. There's a lot, like, in terms of social movements. So you see a lot, you see whatever you've learned in that degree in society today. Like, I mean, I've observed, so living in Long Beach, actually, while the protests were happening and people were marching for Black Lives Matter in the streets and screaming, "I can't breathe," and that's just like that's something that I understand because of my background in sociology. Like, it was just watching basically what we study in action, and just watching society move. So it's useful to know sort of like norms and values, and why a particular group will move for justice or for whatever. It's just
cool. Okay. So when you look at like the coronavirus and the Black Matters movement and all that, what do you see from a sociology perspective? I mean, what's the sociology behind it? What's making it move and all that? Yeah.
Well, there's a common goal, which is, justice and equality for Black lives as much as there, is for white lives and, any other race, etc. So, so there's that common goal, and then there's a movement attached to it, which would be like the Black Lives Matter. Then there's action attached to that, and their norms and values are the same. So they each person within this group has the same ideals or goal, like main goal in mind, based on what they've learned from that group. So so then there's like that movement, and there's that action being taken. So like from a sociological standpoint, it's pretty expected, that that when there is an issue, a social issue, that people will rally around that social issue. And it's also beneficial to the greater society, because what sociology likes to say is that raising awareness is very important for social issues, and this is one of them, and this has been one of them for a very long time. Even since, before our generation, before our parents' generation, this is something that has been moving for quite a while, and it's just about raising awareness to when things happen rather than pushing them under the rug and not, just kind of like moving forward and just turning a blind eye.
Right. So this stuff has to happen in society, like sociology wise.
Yeah, at least in this society, since we allow it.
Right.
You know how other, like, if you were to go to the Middle East, this would not be something that would be okay and allowed. But in America, in American society, since we are a melting pot, and we are, we do have such different values and norms across different cultural groups, it's almost like it's necessary, and it's more normal than not normal to have this kind of thing going on. So.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So then you would see it started small then, like when that whole thing happens, I Can't Breathe, like the people in that area kind of started that movement, and then all around the world kind of started picking up.
Well, I think that's just a very small example of what is happening and what has happened. Just personally, I'm in the middle of these issues, so I'm just more of an observer. But yeah, like I said, like one example of something that's happening a lot and that is not being brought up as much. But now it's kind of all bubbling over to the surface, and it's just like spilling out. It's almost like a volcano. Like, it's been bubbling up inside, and there's been so much heat, like gathering for such a long time, for years and years and years. And these people, not to say like these people, but this cultural group, African American, that culture, they haven't been acknowledged, and they haven't been favored, and they haven't been accepted as easily as, let's say that the white population. Or so they feel the heat, and it's bubbling up to the surface, and it just kind of exploded after that example of the I Can't Breathe movement. And so Black Lives Matter is just gaining awareness. I mean, there's, radical groups within each of these sides, and so I think that's what kind of takes away from the movement, is the radicalization, like how people will go so far to the right or so far to the left, and they'll just attach themselves to that. And so, you have groups like Antifa making the Black Lives Matter movement look pretty bad. And it's like, but that's not the point. The point was to raise awareness. And yes, there is going to be radical groups within each of these sides, but you just have to take it for what it is. And
so like what was I going to say is that, so it's like a Coca-Cola bottle and kind of been shaken up, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, when it pops, like, who is the first person that kind of started this Black Lives Matter movement? Because it seemed to like come and fall together so quickly, where all of a sudden, like within a week, all over the world, people are like just going at it and
Yeah.
making this movement. So it's so interesting, like what I guess started, who
Started,
started
well,
the movement.
like I said, I mean, it's not just one thing that started this. I think
Yeah.
that they're attaching to the Breonna Taylor example of how she was, there was a, a kind of a mistake in that, and she was unfortunately, sacrificed, and 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 then there's so many different examples of this, but like you said, it's more like a Coca-Cola bottle where all of these examples are just like, it's something that we can't ignore anymore, and it's something that we have to approach, and we actually have to take more of an academic standpoint to it, and how
Uh-huh.
to work through it, and to move society forward. And I'm my personal hopes are that people can just be as patient as possible, because at the top things move very, very slowly, and they always have. And
Yeah.
so that's just, things are not going to happen just completely overnight. No laws are going to be made just overnight. It takes a very long time. It takes Democratic Party, and since we are in a democracy, it takes time, because there's people who will and won't agree, and for the greater good, and this and that, and there's just so much conflict up there that, if people actually very much have an opinion and a feeling towards doing something about this, I know protests are very effective in raising awareness, but in actually inducing change, I would encourage those folks, individuals who do believe in the Black Lives Matter, to represent themselves at the higher level, and continue with their own education, so that they can approach this and actually do something about it.
Right. So like when you said we kind of as a whole like started the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of just got to the end, the bottle kind of exploded. Is it like people that are all over the world that kind of have the same mindset that were after this and just started the movement? Or is there one specific like kind of person that kind of led it and was like, we got to do something about it? And then people started following that. And then eventually around the world, people started following that too.
That's a really good question. Um, I I don't know that I've done enough research to pinpoint an actual, like, a person who you know started the "we have to do something about this." I think that this group has been forming for quite some time, and I don't think that it's just one person who's leading it.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like I just looked it up. So Black Lives Matter movement was founded in 2013.
Okay, so it would be
So
that founder,
people,
whoever
yeah, people knew
wants.
about it, and then I guess when this one guy, the I Can't Breathe, happened again, it's like everyone kind of the people who are already involved in this kind of maybe started it, made this continue or be brought up again. Seems
Yeah,
like,
so I was just looking at it, in terms of like a sociological standpoint. And that's, you can look at any social movement in like that, so
yeah,
you like, if you think about it, it's pretty common sense, but I don't think a lot of people really look at things like that. Like, you get beat up for too long, and you just eventually you just can't handle it anymore. And like,
exactly.
people are going to fight for the right thing, and I think equality has been fought for a long time. And like, at Martin Luther King Jr. like was a huge head of that, of maybe this initial movement. So
Yeah,
you're going to have historical figures like that leading the movements, but there's so many people and so many mindsets and so much culture behind it that
I see.
it's just, yeah, it's not going to be able to be ignored, unfortunately, going forward, for the people who have been ignoring it. But
Yeah.
there's also the other side of having patience because it does take so much time to get things actually moving.
Yeah, yeah, I see. So like it's interesting, it's cool that like there's so many people that are in union, but they're like all around the world to have the same mindset and kind of like-minded and after the same thing, but different parts of the world. And so then how do you see the All Lives Matter and how that came in?
In a sense, I can see how the Black Lives Matter movement might not be very happy with the All Lives Matter movement, because it's like taking away from their goal. And it's also just, it the word ignorant comes up because
Mhm.
it just takes away from the goal of the Black Lives Matter, and how they, that group has been oppressed for so long. And then to say like all lives matter, well, of course all lives matter. Like,
Yeah.
of course we all know that, but like, let's not take away from the fact that some people are really trying to stand for their particular cultural group, um, by just saying all lives matter. Like, we are, I think that's kind of common sense.
Yeah.
That's not going to be looked at well from the left.
Yeah, that's what I heard about it. Was it's like people thought it's like replacing Black Lives Matter, and that yeah, right now it's about Black lives, and like you said, of course, like all lives matter. What makes people like come in? I wonder where All Lives Matter kind of came in and started, and why people are getting like that misperception or misunderstanding about Black Lives Matter, that people came in. Because I know people personally too, and like some friends that were like All Lives Matter, and they're all about that. And it's like, do they just not understand that it's not like obviously all lives matter, but right now it's Black Lives Matter and the whole concept of that. And weird how kind of just I get caught on around the world as well with the all lives
Right.
matter.
Yeah. So if you look at like, we're in this wave right now, and we don't want another, like a bigger wave replacing something that really does matter, like, or mean
Yeah.
something. So yeah, I think you're right. It's just like, let's focus on the initial problem, and then we can extend to the next group and the next group and the
Yeah.
next group.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also some people, like now I'm thinking of it because I'm trying to understand from their perspective that there's also a lot of hate in other different types of people, I guess, like when they say all lives, like some like gays are sometimes hated on, and even
Yeah.
whites and other ethnicities are hated on and stuff like that. And maybe that's where it kind of also started triggering all lives matter as well, and kind of moved towards
Yeah.
that. But
I don't think that all lives matter is really going to catch on to everyone, because everyone
definitely.
actually really likes to have their own perspective.
Yeah.
um and I think anything that comes up in society, there's going to be dark and light attached to it, just because balance is something that the world absolutely needs, whether
Yeah,
we like it or
exactly.
not.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think at any point in time, not in history and not going forward, will every single individual human be on the same page in with anything.
Yeah, there's always like there's different religions, and obviously like, people have their own perspectives because of the way they're raised and all the experience that they've been through in their life, and it's everything, and everyone's different. It's like everyone's a unique combination, so they kind of come together with the people who are similar and relative. But I think like in my mind, when I understand people and it's like where's the future going and what is it that we need to do, I think like seeking new perspective is so important, is for us to like come together. And always like, when are we going to get to that point where people, and there is those people that do seek that new perception, that are have enough self-awareness to realize that they are living in their own experience and their own reality that we create for ourselves, not create it, but we are in our experience and past has made our reality, it created our reality. So we live in that until we realize that and seek outside of that, and to unlock our mind to seek the new perspective and go. Because like I grew up Jewish, and I I followed that until I started questioning it, and I started questioning life in itself. And when I realized like my foundation is seeking less and seeking new perspective, new experience, that's kind of like I've started exploring different all different people. I realize like the foundation of everything comes down to loving unconditionally and seeking to understand each other and other people. And so I don't know when it's going to get to that point where people start to as a whole kind of live in that same mindset. But
Wow. So that's so funny. Interesting. We share something in common, because
yeah.
at my dad's side of the family is Jewish, and then my mom's side of the family, they were Christian and Mormon. So
Oh
like,
wow.
So yeah, so I celebrated Hanukkah and Christmas, but
Cool.
never actually went to either a Christian or Jewish church or temple growing up. I actually went to just a spiritual center that my mom brought me to. So
Cool.
like you said, like unconditional love and acceptance and having that openness for that the perception that you have might actually shift, like, and you're just to have that openness, I think is really important, just for everybody. Also, it shows your emotional intelligence and your, you know, even just your intelligence, like,
Yeah, yeah,
as a
exactly.
human being. I think you're right, like everybody does have so much to offer, and just you know, having things black and white and staying on the track that you've been in since you've been born is not necessarily how we're all supposed to operate, because we each have some individual gift that we're supposed to bring to the world, and you know, um
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's so good. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and that's kind of what
Yeah,
inspired the all is one movement. I mean, that's what all is one means to me, and kind of what I'm trying to put out is to seek new perspectives, to seek a new experience, new lesson, because there's something in everyone. You know, you can learn anything from everyone, and like I don't know, there's always that just immediate natural response in human that is like, oh, that's not what I believe in, so like, you know, they fight that, or it's like, oh, it's about Black Lives Matter, all that. And I know that was a great thing, like the whole movement was just kind of getting people to see and empathize with people who are Black and what they go through and all that. And I think that's what it was about, and that's what it means. And yeah, I think that's just the whole concept of like life and living, is to like, that's the important part, I guess I'd say, is to seek new lessons, seek understanding, seek to empathize and understand. And so I want to also ask you, like, also with the coronavirus, like, how do you see the future changing in society, and people because of coronavirus and the conditioning that it kind of made us, like being home and social distancing? You know, is the future going to be different?
oh wow, yeah, that one is very controversial, right? So that is something that you're right, like a lot of conditioning has been attached to, a lot of programming, a lot of, you know, fear. I think that the digital age has been here for quite a while. I mean, it's just hasn't been utilized as much as it could have been before. So maybe they're pushing us to just actually do our jobs online, which we kind of, like I said, already
Yeah, definitely.
already
Like
been
it's
doing. We haven't really been utilizing the tools that we've been given, like technology, to, you know, have a Zoom meeting. Like, there's
so like, yeah, I know like now, like obviously like people have utilized technology and Zoom so much more. And I mean the stock of Zoom like boomed so much because of the coronavirus. It's crazy. And so
yeah,
like, but I'm wondering, will it ever go like, do humans by nature kind of need to connect with other people? Like that's natural.
absolutely.
Do they need to connect in person, or is
Yeah.
connecting online enough?
No. Yeah, no. There's a few aspects to actually, like, to human nature, and one of those very vital aspects are community. And having that energy exchange in person is very important, to human nature, to actually sustaining the human race. I mean,
Yeah.
so so there's going to be all these conspiracies that come out of that. Oh, they're trying to control the population, or oh, they're trying to do this, or oh, they're trying to do that. But it's really about, like I was saying, like thinking long term for yourself, what's going to be the most beneficial. And maybe it's not going to a party, but maybe it's going to coffee with a friend, or, you
Yeah.
know, um, it's
Well,
like
yeah.
maybe it's working out outside, which is kind of what we haven't really been taking advantage of enough. And what I saw just blossom over the course of, this pandemic, just living in Long Beach, like people are dying to get outside. so so I think just, yeah, no, human connection is very important. I think before the pandemic, it was being abused a little bit. And I don't think people were, at least in my generation and the people that I used to be hanging around, it was almost like like hanging out and going to parties and this and that was more just distraction from your actual life purpose and what you're supposed to be doing. And that was so common, so much more common than actually doing what you're supposed to be
Yeah,
doing.
that's so true.
So I think that there is a lot of good and a lot of,
Yeah,
change. I wouldn't say bad, but I would say change. And
change.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, great way to
devastation. I
put it.
mean,
Mhm.
people are actually losing their lives, and families are really are not able to say goodbyes. And I mean, so there's been really hard things attached to this, but I think that it's drowning out a little bit the bigger issues.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, what kills people on the daily, like car accidents or heart attacks. Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think, yeah.
yeah. It kind of seems like I'm kind of looking at it in a perspective where like that was one big life lesson, and a lot of lessons in life sometimes are like a slingshot where it gets pulled back and a lot of destruction happens, but it goes back so much further. Like a muscle, when it rips, it kind of builds back stronger. I think that in the future, or at least I have a feeling that people are going to be so much more grateful and for coming back together and being able to socialize again and utilize that much more than they were before. Because even before, a lot of people just kind of distracted with social media and, like you said, parties and stuff that are just not focused on the self and things like that. And because of coronavirus, it made people kind of be social distance and like kind of just reflect on the self more, and doing a lot of things online, and a lot of I think the internet itself kind of created a lot more entrepreneurs, of course, too. So I think even from coronavirus, a lot of people may have gotten inspired to start something on the internet as well. So I see a lot of good coming from it as well, and coming back to it. I think the future, like now that I think about it from this conversation, that people are gonna come back together stronger than ever. It's gonna be just beautiful.
I hope, yes.
I hope
And
so.
that's the more optimistic people like us are saying that, and let's keep going with that. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
definitely.
always going to have that balance of people who take advantage of, they'll be at a
Mhm.
party and they'll be on their phone, and it's like, what the hell, what is the point of this? Like, but
Yeah, yeah.
so we're always going to have that, but I think you're right. Like, it is like a muscle, and community is like a muscle, and we've been, what's it called? We've been nurturing it. We've been repairing it. We've been healing it for a little while. And my hope is that people do come back and actually value each other's time a lot more. And the in-person just
Yeah,
opportunity a
definitely.
little bit more.
I hope so. I guess we'll see what happens. But so hey, back to you. You're a yoga instructor now, and is that what you do full time?
Yeah, right
Main
now, I
focus?
mean, I just take as many clients as I can online, and sometimes I'll social distance outside. But I also, I mean, that's kind of all over the place.
Hmm.
It's not consistent, and always wanted to get my master's, so I just took the time to kind of nurture my body and get as healthy as possible, and then able to give back. So I'm looking into and has just applied to the first grad school for social work. So and then I'm trying to get some experience there. For job wise, I just applied, and I'm in the process of getting hired for an inpatient mental health treatment center for very, very high risk, or I wouldn't say high risk, but very, some really intense mental health issues, like,
Hmm.
so suicide risk very high there. And I'll basically be like the house manager of like an inpatient facility, just to start gaining experience there, because I did feel like before this I was just kind of playing around and just here and there with the
Yeah,
job.
exploring.
And now I just feel like more than ever, I mean, I have to give back, like, to
Yeah.
and mental health is such an
Oh,
important
definitely.
topic, and I think that actually has more to do with physical health than any
Oh,
any
absolutely. I
really.
agree. And I think I think a lot of like mental health is because I'm really interested in mental health as well. And I thought about going back to school specifically for that as well. And I think a lot of it's dismissed. Like I have a lot of very close friends and exes who has struggled with a lot of different mental illness from like bipolar and schizophrenia and stuff like that. And seeing them, they're coming in and out of mental hospitals and how they interact with other people. A lot of people don't know how to deal with them, and they kind of see it as like a negative, like go away, and they're not really empathizing and trying to actually understand what this person with mental health struggles is going through, the mental struggles. And I think that's something that I think could change the world. And when I thought about all lives matter, I mean, going back to that, my first thoughts were like, I think one important thing as for all lives matter is to focus more on people that struggle with like mental will have mental challenges and mental struggles, because it's just so overlooked. I think a lot of the times is, yeah, I mean, just for so many reasons that we live in our own reality, and we see kind of from our experiences, we have our certain own mindset. And when we come across people who are dealing with mental struggles and sometimes don't even know that they have a mental illness or something like that, because again, they live in their own reality, to seek understanding, to seek lesson and try to understand them, kind of gets to a point where it's like, if they're not aligning with each other, they're kind of seeing this person as like a toxic or negative or whatever. And it's just so overlooked. And
yeah, you're so right. I mean, it is really, it's not pinpointed as the problem that, and then it extends to like physical health. I mean, like, unfortunately, I lost my dad in 2017 to a heart attack, but just before that, he was manic, and he was diagnosed bipolar his whole life, which
Mhm.
it was untreated. And he did go to a treatment facility, but he didn't actually finish the program, and then he didn't do the aftercare instructions like what was recommended, and like it did lead to so much stress on his heart that he passed away. So
Wow.
I think you're completely correct. It's really overlooked, and it's not normalized enough, and it's not pinpointed as like the root of the problem, like uh and so then people just don't know how to deal with themselves, and then other people don't know how to deal with them. And there's no actual mental health class that we're taking in elementary through high school. So it's really interesting that this is a huge, I mean, it's more prevalent than, and almost every family has at least one person in the family, or extended family that have struggled with something
Yeah,
like
I have
this.
family members as well with bipolar, and
Right.
yeah, I love where you're going with that, into mental health. Because I love that stuff, and that's actually what inspired this podcast originally. It was going to be called Mind Matter, but the name was taken. But it was going to be about mental health and working with people. That kind of what inspired this whole podcast. And then I ended up calling the Merging Minds, and just interviewing all types of people, get into their minds and trying to understand people and
Wow.
get people to share their perspective and help people empathize with and explore new perspectives and stuff like that. But yeah, again, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk soon, and enjoy your hike.
Definitely. Thanks, Keith. Have a good
All right.
rest of
You
your
too.
day.